I'm back! What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Diaries, where I share with you tales from Dungeons and Dragons. I hope that you found this journey thus far fun and informative, and I hope today you learn a little something from my shenanigans. Last week, the party ended the session with an assault on the Temple of St. Rhoswen in the town of Greydale. They know that the priests of the temple have been indoctrinated by the cult they've been trying to stop, and they don't want to let the cult do as they please while the party enters the mine, the source of all this evil. Their session ended in the middle of a massive combat with the entire first floor of the temple. The final action of that last session came from Reginald. He's the Blood Hunter, and he attacked and then assumed his Lycan form. So when we picked up combat again this session, working with the priests are a pair, well, there was a trio until one ate a critical chromatic orb, but there are still left a pair of monster slayers with the Blighted Order, and they now notice a Lycan in front of them, and that's where they're going to focus their attention on. Over a few rounds of combat, most of the fodder priests fall to attacks from various different party members, but there's the two monster hunters left and two stronger ranged cultists who are stabbing down into the party with spiritual weapons and casting things like sacred flames and healing words. Due to Reginald's placement on the battle map and well use of the Sentinel feat, the fight ceases to become a normal fight and becomes a war of attrition between the party's healers and the enemy's ability to damage Reginald. The enemies can't efficiently get to the party's backline, but Reginald also can't stay up without the help of the healers, so all of the enemies are now pouring their damage into Reginald, and the party's bard and cleric are throwing healing words onto him after they use their actions. Meanwhile, Danny, the ghost, is often using her action to use sympathetic mending to heal Reginald as well. After more fighting, there are two combatants left on the board, the leader of the monster hunters, whose name is Boreana, and one of the ranged cultists. It's at this point that the party decides, hey, maybe we don't need to kill everyone in sight, and they start considering to do non-lethal strikes. But when Valerie tries to make a non-lethal attack on Boreana, I pause the game and I start sending that player a private message. I ask her why Valerie would want to do a non-lethal strike. See, to the party, she's Valerie, Knight of Ogma, and she wants to show mercy to keep her appearances, because in reality she is Shivas, pragmatic Yuan-Ti cleric disguised as Valerie. I offered her some perspective that I thought her character would have, though. I said if she wants to do a non-lethal strike, that is fine, but I just wanted to point out that her character knows that this individual that she is trying to spare is a monster hunter with the Blighted Order, and that individual has seen that part of the party consists of a ghost and a Lycan. This NPC is now a loose end and could cause problems down the road if she is allowed to leave. Do with that information what you will. Having this private conversation served a dual purpose for me. One, it offered perspective to the player that I thought their character would reasonably have, but two, it made the rest of the party suspicious. See, all of the players know the true identity of their cleric as Shivas the Yuan-Ti, but none of their characters do. They just know her as Valerie, the party's knight. So sometimes I do things like pause the game to send her a private message for a minute to ramp up the rest of the table's paranoia. After our brief back and forth, the player decided to change her mind and chose to attack lethally, but darn, she doesn't do enough damage with her attack to finish off her target. A little more fighting goes on and the ranged cultist was knocked unconscious and Boreana taken alive. Valerie will let her live, for now. The party begins to interrogate Boreana. Normally, she'd fight to the death against monsters, but she's trusting Valerie's honor as a knight that she will let her live. But remember, Valerie is no true knight on the inside. As the party interrogated the monster hunter, they found her answers carry a particular vitriol, and from her perspective, rightfully so. She would not answer Danny, the ghost's questions, and referred to her as damned, told her that she's wrong and that she should not exist. She told Reginald that he's a coward for not fulfilling his duty as a recruit of the Blighted Order by eliminating himself once he became the monster. Reginald handled his insult better than Danny, who flew into a different room very upset, with Sayri, Otto, and Aster following her to see if she's okay. The trio comforted Danny, who's busy saying things like, "She's right, I shouldn't exist, I can't even feel I am wrong," and in a very cute scene, Sayri lets Danny possess her and then hugs the other two so that Danny can feel what a hug is like in her own way. It's very wholesome. Meanwhile, back with the rest of the party, there's a very different tone with an investigation going on. Reginald, Valerie, and Stephen have begun extracting all the information they can from their captive on the layout of the temple, when Reginald turns around and solemnly exclaims, "She's seen me turn." Stephen offers to let her go for a bit more info, and she says that if they honor that agreement, she will skip town and return to the manor on high. Boreanna tells them that the head priest, Abraham, is upstairs and has at least one goblin in his service. She saw it once and made a note to investigate, but she never really got the chance. There's also a labyrinth in the basement, though she's never seen it firsthand. She only has access to the ground floor after all. When they have all they need from her, Valerie says, "We appreciate your cooperation, but unfortunately, my honor as a knight has run out," and she cleaves Boreanna in half with her glaive. She loots the dead monster hunter Splintmail and puts it on immediately, upgrading her armor class. Well, now that there's a pile of corpses in the main room of the temple, Otto goes to investigate. He finds a hallway of statues. Basically, like, each statue successively tells a different piece of the story. The first one is of a woman planting a seed, then the next one she's watering it, then the next one it sprouts a little bit, and then it grows and grows and grows, until on the last stone statue there's this wonderful flower in it, and he decides he's gonna break off the stone statue and pocket it. See, Saint Rhoswen is the saint of agriculture, and I wanted to add a little flair to her temple to depict her domain, but, you know, just as he's finished committing his sacrilege, he smells the scent of burning. They scrambled for a bit, but the party finds the wooden stairs to the second floor in an otherwise stone temple, completely engulfed in flames. Reginald decides to call up asking if everyone's okay up there, and the hired help, some goblins, respond. One goes, "Should we answer him?" And the other one replies, "No, you idiot!" They're not very smart. And it's at that point that Otto, who speaks Goblin, puts on his best impression and convinces the two goblins yelling from the room upstairs that he's one of them. From there, he finds out that there's 9 in total upstairs, as well as the boss, Abraham, and he also learns from them that Abraham has a captive. With no reasonable way to douse the stairs, the party takes a short rest waiting for them to completely burn out. Meanwhile, the goblins set up an ambush at the top of what used to be the stairs. See, knowing that the party would have to climb with no staircase, the goblins prepared to fire arrows into their hands and drop burning oil on whoever was climbing up. It really could have been a dangerous encounter, I think, especially considering the party already expended a lot of their spell slots in the previous battle. But our heroes solved this conundrum really well, actually. Sayri is a satyr and she can jump very well, so they planned to have Danny possess her, and she would jump up and try to secure a rope for everyone, and it worked. The goblins opened fire and hit her a little bit, but then Danny possessed one of the goblins who started stabbing at his friends, and as more and more party members climbed up, the goblins started to fall, and they really weren't an issue anymore, and they began to fall back. The first one to successfully retreat was the one that Danny was inside of possessing, and he retreated into another room and he locked the door behind him, and now the player who plays Danny realized that this began the following encounter, as the room is full of the room is full of ghouls and zombies. She decides, screw this goblin, and possesses one of the ghouls instead. Combat goes on for a time, but even the undead themselves are defeated easily, once again by a clutch channel divinity turn undead from Valerie, and 2 of the goblins end up being taken captive. Out of fear, they give further info on the layout of the floor, warning the party that the next room contains a torture chamber and that more goblins will ambush. A long hallway is ahead of the party, and there's several arrow slits along the way for goblins to fire through. So Stephen the Warlock casts a darkness spell. The party runs to it blindly, but they're safe from the goblins' ambush. Otto quickly dispatches most of them with another Magnify Gravity spell, and Sayri convinces the survivors to surrender. So yeah, there really isn't a ton to talk about this session other than giving you the continued narrative of what's been going on. There's not really a whole lot of good things to bite into for me to give DM advice to, because most of the session was just a series of pretty normal and standard combat encounters. But there was something cool in the last portion of the session, and it mostly involved Danny, our ghost. After interrogating the goblins, they knew that the next series of rooms were Abraham's private sanctum, but the goblins were not able to provide any information on what was inside because they're not allowed into his private sanctum. So Danny goes on to scout ahead. She sees that the walls are scratched, stained, and covered with strange gibberish. Further ahead, she finally makes it to the office of Abraham the priest, and she sees him. He was once a cleric of St. Rhoswen, but now he is a powerful member of this cult. He's paranoid. He's casting preparatory wards on himself while holding a young woman hostage. Also in the room, hiding with a knife, is the young daughter of the blacksmith back from session 6. I think most sane D&D players would have recognized that is the boss. I am going to retreat and go back to the rest of the party. Especially Danny, given that she is a ghost and she's just scouted that the enemy is a really powerful priest. That guy can do very bad things to undead, likely. I mean, Danny knows what Valerie can do to undead with her turn undead ability, and this guy looks even stronger. But instead, Danny went for the hero play. First, she quietly retreated and unlocked the door to Abraham's private sanctum, where the rest of the party was waiting. It was a locked door, and she unlocked it so they can technically come back in. But she didn't tell them she was unlocking this door. She just floated back to the room where the priest was held with his captive, and she shouted, "Run as fast as you can, get away from him," and attempted to possess the cleric. For clarity, the future survival of Danny as a character in this campaign completely depended on this priest failing his charisma save on her possession. If he passes his saving throw, he kills her before the party knows what's going on. But he failed. So she possessed him and had him run far back and decided to hold him back while this captive girl ran away. Now, I pulled the player that plays Danny into a private voice channel for this part because I thought it would be cooler that way. So we jump back to the main voice channel on our Discord, and I describe to the players what they see, which is suddenly bursting through the door is a dirty, teary, exasperated young woman who drops to her knees and says, "Please, you have to save me. Something's holding him back, but I won't be able to hold him long. You have to help me. You have to stop him." And I ended the session. We of course explained to the rest of the players what they just missed, but I felt like it was a shocking moment and a good cliffhanger to give the players, and it really was a good way to end the session, I think. Hats off to Danny. The players in this campaign have been operating more like mercenaries than heroes this entire time, carving up anything that gets in their way, even mind-controlled human villagers. But for the first time in the campaign, someone went above and beyond and risked themselves to do something extraordinarily heroic. There was no mechanical advantage to be gained from Danny's actions, but still, they did something heroic, and they made sure that this girl got away from the fray before a harrowing combat emerged. And it's those kinds of moments that are what Dungeons & Dragons are all about, isn't it? I strongly encourage you to support your players when they make high-risk, high-reward plays, even at the risk of their character, because when those actions work, those will be the moments that your players will never shut up about. Those will be the moments that they will never forget. Anywho, guys, that's it for me this week. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of DM Diaries, and if you did, please leave a comment or a like below. Share this series with a friend if you're so inclined, and if you have any ideas for any Dungeons & Dragons related content you'd like from me in the future, please let me know. Until next time, I'm Clay, and I hope you have a wonderful day.